Welcome back, guys, to another episode of Hazy Headed. This is going to be covering book one of the Stoicism mini-series, Forging a Stoic, where we will be reviewing this book, and I'll be giving my thoughts and, anecdotes and everything like that. Anecdotes? I don't think that's the correct word. But regardless, so far, the introduction was long, and essentially the most important part of that was just kind of describing how the book would be, little history lesson, for those like myself that don't know Marcus Aurelius. But from the first book, it was a lot of discussions of people in his life, names that I'm not super familiar with, but he had lists like his dad, his brother, and what he's learned from them. And I just think it's so cool that he started the book that way. Honestly, that's kind of like an Evan Brandt coded thing, honestly. He was just saying how much wisdom that he's learned from his brother or his mom, who was nothing but great to him and has no ill intent towards anyone. And he talks about these different people and his influences in his life, kind of quick summaries of what he's taught, whether it was through philosophy, whether it was through values. And something interesting, there's a term called logos, and what that is the divine knowing. Essentially, what it is in Greek it's the pursuit of knowledge. It's that pure understanding. It's how philosophically driven they were as a society, and it shows in Marcus Aurelius's text. And that is pretty cool because they imagine spending your whole life trying to find reason, trying to better yourself. That is truly the culture they created, and it shows up in meditations. And what's even cooler is near the end of the first book. These books, by the way, are just essentially chapters. But in the end of the first book, he says, "And to the gods." And he starts listing off in a gratuitous way that he is so blessed with all these people around him. And I really think that that's important. And you can see, even in ancient philosophical text on Stoicism, or I guess trailblazing for Stoicism, it shows how important it is to have gratitude. And I just love it because I feel like I'm already a bit of a Stoic without knowing too much, because I myself try to be grateful for my friends every day, my family. And you can tell Marcus Aurelius has that same sort of energy in his personal reflections on his family. So I wanted to look back. I thought it was really interesting. So his brother Severus, and he said, "To love my family, truth and justice. It was through him that I encountered Teresa, Helvidius, Cato, Dion, and Brutus, and conceived of a society of equal laws governed by equality of status of speech, and the rulers who respect the liberty of their subjects above all else. And from him as well to be steady and consistent in valuing philosophy, and to help others and be eager to share, not to be pessimistic, and never doubt your friend's affection for you." Amazing. So he really outlines this chapter in a way, like I said, of gratitude. And there's many accounts on that. It's a shorter book, but it's called Debts and Lessons. And right off the bat, I've heard some in the introduction, and I've heard some people that there's going to be times in meditations where he's not going to be so optimistic. He's got more of a pessimistic / negative outlook towards life in certain scenarios. But right off the bat, I can tell that he is nothing but appreciation. You can tell the way that he was raised. He had everything. He was rich. He was in a wealthy family. He had all this access to knowledge, but the way that he took it all in through appreciation, through reflections, you can tell that there's no way that he didn't live in a spectacular life because of that, because of giving back to the people that he loves. And I think ultimately that's an amazing way to live. I think we need to all do that. I don't wake up enough every day and say, wow, I've got a family that cares for me. Wow, I've got friends that love me. I've got friends that would do anything for me. I'm a phone call away from anybody that I could ever need in my life. And, I hope I provide that same value for them, because that's what makes life important. That's he is not he has not said I once in this chapter yet. Now, granted, this is only the first chapter, but still, to start off his texts, the first thing that he does is list off his grandfather's experience, what he's learned from them, what he's learned from his mother, what he's learned from his stepmother. I believe his grandfather had a girlfriend or something, step grandmother, whatever. But it's baffling to me that someone of such prestige would still come back to that gratuitous state of mind. You would think that an ancient ruler of such prestige, of such prowess, would be tooting his own horn. This is my journal. This is my philosophical views. Me, me, me. He'd have every right to do that. He would have every right to start off this book as, I'm the most amazing thing since sliced bread. If sliced bread even it existed in 100 AD, But to be able to have that humility, to have that understanding, that is beyond eye-opening. And I think that's a mark of a great leader. If you look at everybody in ancient history that had these kind of ideals of brotherhood or unity, they're the best in the world. Look at Gandhi. Look at Winston Churchill. It was always about us as a unit. It was about everybody being together as a whole. And I think that's the biggest thing I picked up from this chapter, or this book 1. If you look, if you were back in grade school and you were on a kickball team and you had one standout son of a gun, but he didn't bring, he was the best, but he didn't bring this team together. People resented him. You're going to lose to a bunch of average Joes that have each other's back, that can operate together in unison. It is all about unity. So, if you're kind of that lone wolf type, that says, oh, I don't need friends, I don't need this, I don't need that, that's bullshit. You do. You need your friends. You need your family. You need a support system that's going to take you to the next level. You need people to tell you what needs to be done. You need people that love you, but are also tough on you. There's so much that you get from other people, and it's about putting your ego to the side and just being able to listen to them, respect what they have to say, and realize that they might know something that you don't. So it's the same way for me. I think sometimes I get a little big-headed. I think sometimes my ego can go a little rampant. I don't try it to be, but it's just a pure excitement. But I really, I sit back, and there's people that have so much more experience with me, and they just want to see me do good, and that is the biggest blessing ever. And I know I mentioned a little bit earlier that the last part of this chapter or book, he says, and to the gods, thank you for X, Y, and Z. Thank you for my parents. Thank you for grandparents. And I just think that's crazy because, first of all, having more than one God is crazy in my mind. Obviously, Greek mythology, but you can tell that there was a sharp distinction between religion and philosophy. I think that makes things interesting because you're not, that he's not talking about the God of war, shout out God of war. But, I'm not super privy on Greek mythology, but, he wasn't shouting out all the major gods. He was shouting out his friends, his family, logos, which I think is one of the coolest phrases that I've discovered so far just on chapter 1, that they are in search of this divine knowledge that through philosophy, through hard work, through discovery that can be created. So yeah, just my final thoughts of this first part of meditations is humility. And I think Stoicism pulls a lot from that. So my biggest lesson for myself that I'm going to try to implement is use my journal for good. Thank the people that I have in my life, that I have the blessing to be a phone call away from everyone I love, especially in today's society. You know, he had to send it out through a fucking carrier pigeon on top of a dragon across the sea. You know, obviously I'm joking, but humility, that is the biggest lesson I've taken, and I'm going to try to implement that even more than I already have, because obviously Marcus Aurelius did, and I can tell this is the foundations of Stoicism. So keep watching. These are going to be pretty quick, but 3 releases every Monday, and I'm so excited to go continue this journey with you guys. Love you.